Good morning, everyone. It is Tuesday, April 17th, and this is a impromptu, unexpected, had to make video. So I'd commented on a Joe Rogan podcast that technology and inventions in general are not inherently neutral. There's almost nothing in the universe that's inherently neutral. I think most people who pay attention to reality know that. However, there were a number of trolls who came along and decided that they could school me. So I decided to. Now, the one of the examples provided was a hammer. Well, aside from so the material itself is not even inherently neutral, right? You have two different materials on either end, and one's of course metal, so it has electric charge, so it's literally not neutral. It's at ground neutral in terms of with the Earth, but in terms of the entire universe, it's not neutral. It is symmetric along the sagittal plane, so in that way there is some type of balance. But the whole point of the hammer is that it's not balanced. You actually want there to not be balance in the hammer. You wouldn't expect to hammer in a nail with a plastic circle, so the reason you use a hammer is because it's not neutral or balanced. And historically, of course, hammers were a male invention for use by men, and in war and in building, carried by men, and in the Nordic culture is a symbol of male virility and power and of war. So it has never been inherently, the invention called the hammer has never been inherently neutral. And thank God for that. In fact, I want to make this clear that I'm not saying that anything inherently male or inherently female, that it's a bad thing. That's actually a good thing. That's the reason why we use it. There's a Taoist saying that the cup is only useful insofar as it carries the fluid. Once you drink the fluid, which is usually water in Taoism, right? Then the cup becomes useless and you don't care about it anymore until you need it again, until you're thirsty. So the fact that it's not balanced and neutral is why you use the invention. As far as the moral ramifications of technology, of course, something like a pencil or this cord, these things themselves have no morality. It's the onus of the user to use the technology and or science in the correct manner. I would think that this would be self-explanatory, but it's not on the internet. So I've decided to give you two extreme examples. I didn't have any hammers in the clinic. I apparently took it home, but I do have this. All right, I forget the technical name for the one with two ends, but I just call it a mace or an awl. At any rate, this is an unbalanced and non-neutral tool weapon. And that is the point of it. The entire point is that it has spike balls on the end for striking a person. Not an animal, a person. It is decidedly not neutral. Now, left sitting by itself, it will do nothing but decompose, especially first the wood, then, of course, through oxidation, the metal balls and the chains. However, it wouldn't be, without a person, there would be no name for this. And it also would not even exist. So it was imbued energetically, and its design is most definitely not neutral. I don't mind people having rose-colored glasses about reality. It's just in the application of ideals, especially socialist ideals from Europeans, such as that there is a neutral to technology, even recycling. That is a ridiculous assertion. The other invention, take a look at this. These extendy claw things. This most demonstrates the point of technology, which is leverage over distance. That's what technology is for, leverage over some type of distance. Now that distance could be economical distance, it could be class-based distance, it could be the distance from here to the completion of a project. But the entire point of technology is to help us to leverage in an environment that is already itself not neutral. Not only are there charges constantly moving around, but there is a decided physical advantage in nature, and that is actually good. It's not good if you're the human and you're being eaten by a lion or a bear. However, from nature's point of view, it's good because that kind of neutrality actually keeps the real non-balanced situation in an equilibrium, a homeostasis. But let's be honest, neutrality is stagnation, right? It's only the polar differences and the swishing and swashing between the two ends that generates the energy for things to change and to improve or evolve. Without that, you have just a continuation of the same thing. There's a Chinese saying, nothing is balanced. We create the balance. That's our modus operandi. And that's why we have the concept of justice. There is no justice inherently built into the universe, and there is no justice inherently built into any object, right? It's not inherently neutral, because that would imply that if you looked at the atoms, that they had in themselves neutrality. They don't, or they wouldn't have bonded, right? Helium might be inherently neutral, but you can't even breathe helium, or you will die. So this idea that that we can create a technocracy that is perfectly moral by being amoral is, of course, nonsense. And I don't mind that people believe it, because everybody needs a faith. I'm going to tell you the one faith that most people have they don't even realize is the faith in authority. However, when we start trying to apply that and then pretend that there's no consequences, that's, of course, nonsense. Whether we use glass bottles, plastic bottles, plant-made plastic bottles that come from recyclables, all of those have a cost and a pro and a con and an outcome. And those outcomes often are bad for humans or the environment or animals in the environment. They could be inherently toxifying of the air or water, right? Highways are incredibly toxifying of the water. So does that mean we get rid of roads? No. But it does mean that we at least are honest about, hey, why are fish and amphibian populations dropping? Well, it could be all the runoff full of oil and tar going in and changing the delicate pH balances of the water. Eventually, could amphibians evolve to handle that kind of pH balance? Yeah, they could, but in the meantime, don't expect to have them. Could butterfly and bee populations return? Yeah, they could. But in the meantime, don't expect it. If we use Monsanto and Roundup and pesticides and herbicides, that the insects and other animal things that rely on those are going to do well. They're not. I'm not going to be capable of forcing population to change. I am just here to give you the honest appraisal of the situation. And the honest appraisal of the situation is that technology, and the entire point of the technocracy, and why we inherently love the technocracy, is that we love the advantages that come from it. All of us. All of us are deriving advantages from the internet, from electricity, from cars. But we cannot say that there are no disadvantages, and if we say that, it doesn't mean that it's actually true. There are disadvantages to living in a modern technological world. And those disadvantages often come at the price of future harm to other humans and animals. Because after all, Earth is going to survive. The question is, are we going to survive? That's not a guarantee. It's upon us. Again, the onus is upon us as to how objects are used. I could make this a display. Of course, I have to account for its unbalanced and non-neutral state. I also need to account for how it makes people feel. For example, here in my clinic, you notice I don't hang it up in my clinic. Why? Because it is not neutral. It is decidedly violent in its presentation, and also it just doesn't match the decor, let's be honest. So hope that clears that up, especially for people who are popping in because they are trying to get a dig, and so I made this video so that they could know how to analyze simple things around them. And I hope that you have a good day.